President Trump is visiting Beijing for high stakes talks with Xi Jinping as the U.S Iran war creates a global energy crisis. President Trump arrived in China with a team of business and technology tycoons and leaders, framing this visit publicly as a trade focused mission aimed at strengthening economic ties between the world's two largest economies. But even before the meeting began, the strategic narratives surrounding the trip shifted drastically. The visit was meant to be about trade, technology, and economic cooperation, yet it is clearly being overshadowed by the ongoing Middle East crisis. The visit is taking place while the U.S. Iran sits in a fragile ceasefire. That context is critical here because historically the United States has avoided signaling vulnerability during active conflicts. Yet today, American president is traveling to Beijing precisely because the crisis has exposed an uncomfortable reality that China holds influence over Iran that Washington does not. Before departing for Beijing, the Trump made an striking statement that the United States does not need China's help in the Iran conflict. But the reality is that the Iran war has already cast a long shadow over the summit. China is Iran's largest economic customer, a key diplomatic partner, and a permanent member of the UN Security Council. So, in other words, Beijing has leverage that can help stabilize or prolong the conflict. By traveling to meet Xi Jinping at this moment, the United States is sending a powerful signal to the world that global crisis can no longer be managed unilaterally. This represents an implicit admission of limits of the American power, but it is also something more strategic, an invitation to China to act as a co-manager of the global stability. This visit therefore operates on multiple levels of strategic communication. First message is to Iran that China has influence over the trajectory of their conflict. And secondly, the message for Europe and the global markets is that the United States is seeking help to stabilize energy prices and prevent wider economic disruption. Thirdly, it's a message to the global south as well that rivalry between Washington and Beijing has boundaries when global stability is at stake. So, in short, the visit elevates China from being merely a competitor to being a stakeholder in crisis management. But this trip is not just about the Middle East, it is equally about redefining the US China relationship itself. For years, the dominant narrative was decoupling and confrontation. Yet this visit signals a new phase, what we might call competitive coexistence. The emerging doctrine is simple that the United States and China will compete structurally but cooperate tactically where they cannot avoid one another. This is the profound shift. It acknowledges the global challenges from wars to energy shocks to supply chains cannot be managed without engagement between the world's two largest powers. This visit also sends different message to different allies and rivals globally. The US allies in Europe, in Gulf, and Japan, and the signal is clear that China must share responsibility for global stability. This is about burden sharing in a world where crises are too large for any one country to manage alone. And at the same time, message to Russia is which is a more subtle but equally significant message is that cooperation between Washington and Beijing on energy and Middle East stability could reduce Moscow's leverage and limit the benefits it gains from prolonged conflict and high oil prices. And domestically, for the US, the visit carries political messaging as well. The Iran war is costly and unpopular. So, by traveling to Beijing, President Trump projects deal making, crisis leadership, and an effort to stabilize the global economy. Taken together, the symbolism of this trip is striking. It makes the transition from a period of defined by confrontation to one defined by managed rivalry. The United States is signaling that while competition with China will continue in technology, security, and influence, cooperation is now unavoidable in moments of global crisis. So, to sum up, I would say that China is no longer simply a challenger to the international order, it is becoming an unavoidable participant in managing it. And that is the real strategic significance of this visit by the President Trump. Thank you so much.